Welcome to today's program, an in-depth conversation with Mark Weinstein, presented by the Los Angeles chapter of the Jewish National Fund USA's Real Estate Division. We ask today that if you can switch to speaker view, that will allow you to see the speakers as they present as we go. Also keep in mind that you've been muted for the course of the presentation. And if questions come up, you may enter them into chat and our hosts will monitor them as we go throughout the course of the program. Please enjoy today's program.
Good afternoon. I'm David Rosenthal, and I'm president and CEO of Curtis Rosenthal. We're a commercial real estate appraisal firm operating out of Southern California. I'm also a proud President Society donor, JNF-USA Real Estate Division member, and co-founder and co-chair of our JNF-LA Real Estate Group. It's great to see so many friends and colleagues on the call today, and we see more people are coming in as we speak. First off, thank you to our executive sponsors for today's event, to Adam Belfer of HIG Realty Partners, Steve Bram of George Smith Partners, Karen Kennedy of National Asset Services, Mark Levinson of Carlton Fields, and Mark Weinstein, our speaker today, of MJW Investments. It's also my pleasure, together with my firm, to be an executive sponsor. Before we jump into the main part of our program, let's take a minute to share why we do what we do. JNF-USA has been a nation-building organization for 120 years. The development of land and communities is part of its DNA. We have provided the infrastructure for over 1,000 communities, built over 250 reservoirs and dams, increasing Israel's water supply by 15%. We've mobilized 50,000 volunteers for farming, provided services annually to over 45,000 people with special needs, invested in 180 heritage sites that attract over 3.2 million visitors a year. And we have a mission to bring 500,000 new residents to the Negev and 300,000 new residents to the Galilee regions. Here in LA, for the last 6 years, we've had an active real estate community where we meet for networking lunches, celebrate through signature events, and fundraise for JNF's work, including raising money for a fire truck, a baseball field, and new communities. Over the past year, we've been hard at work building a foundation of leadership, including a cabinet, advisory council, and ambassador program. I invite you to continue the conversation with me if you'd like to learn more. And now I'm very excited to share that our LA Real Estate Group is going north. This gorgeous area of Israel is home to just about 10% of Israel's population, and it contains rolling green hills, farmland, boutique and artisan businesses, and ultimately is the future of our nation-building focus. For the next 12 months, we will be fundraising for JNF-USA's Go North initiative to develop this region and bring 300,000 people to live, work, and thrive. Again, this is all part of sustainability and strategically building our homeland for generations to come. We will produce programming for you with interesting speakers, and we'll highlight 3 projects in particular. Number 1, an international culinary institute. Number 2, a medical center. And number 3, an employment center. All terrific projects. Thankfully, even before our official campaign launched today, we have already raised over $70,000 from the real estate community just here in Los Angeles. What you're seeing is our go-to online fundraising page. A big thank you to all the people you see here who are also listed on the fundraising page. So where do we go from here? We want you to join our real estate family, become a real estate division member, help us improve the quality of life for our brothers and sisters in the North, take advantage of this local and national business network, and ultimately We want you to feel proud that you're playing an active role in the story that we call Israel. Thank you.
I think now Mark Levinson is going to be introducing our speakers. Mark, you're muted.
I'm unmute. I thought I had unmuted before. Okay, good. Well, thank you, David. Thank you for the remarks, and thank you for sharing a little bit about what JNF does. And JNF, of course, does many local and other national activities that include a nationwide referral directory, complimentary sponsorships, and more than that. But let me focus on our program today. And it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mark Weinstein. As many of you may know, Mark is a veteran LA developer and an icon in the real estate world here in LA. Let me share with you a bit of Mark Weinstein's background. And besides being loaded with a great sense of humor, likely nurtured by his early days as an attorney, Mark started MJW Investments about 40 years ago, and he's acquired since then about $8+ billion of real estate holdings across most asset categories, and today is a majority owner of a portfolio of approximately $950 million of student and multifamily housing projects. Mark's secret is off-market acquisitions. MJW's footprint projects from Florida, from Florida to Texas to California, of course. Here in LA, Mark is known for repositioning Santee Village, which is one of Los Angeles's largest adaptive reuse projects of over 800,000 square feet of mixed use in the Fashion District in downtown Los Angeles. And from that springboard, Mark has developed a distinct, respected reputation in adaptive reuse and mixed development. Fast forward to today, Mark is now supporting development by joint venturing. There's a recent article in the Los Angeles Business Journal that you may be interested. I think it was in the April 12th edition, and where Mark teamed up as a co-GP with a Venice-based company and acquired about 1,100 bed student housing community near BYU in Utah. So it comes as no surprise that Mark was voted count them five times by the Los Angeles Business Journal as among the 500 most influential people in Los Angeles. Mark served as LA Mayor's Counsel for Housing and Development, and certainly he's participated in many Jewish organizations and has been a powerful force for good in Los Angeles. Turning to our interview, we've formatted the conversation into two parts. Kicking off the conversation is JNF Los Angeles Real Estate Cabinet member and co-chair of today's program, Adam Belfer. And Adam will hand off the conversation with Mark to Karen Kennedy, who is the JNF Real Estate Cabinet member. So please join me in welcoming Mark Weinstein.
Thank you for the nice introduction.
Mark, great to see you.
Nice to see you.
Well, I definitely appreciate you making the time for this discussion. Looking forward to it. A little background. So Mark, when I first moved to LA, I participated in a Federation CLI program where Mark was my mentor, and I gotten to know him well over the last few years, and really a very successful and just wonderful individual. And I'm looking forward to this discussion. Kick it off just starting on your background. So, some people in our business hit a triple by being born on third base, whereas you stepped up to the plate and just hit it out of the park. So I want to start the discussion from the beginning, hit on growing up in Los Angeles, how you got into real estate and how you found your first deal.
Okay, so I grew up in Canoga Park and went to Canoga Park High School, and I was most famous there for just running around. I was on the track team. And as I grew up, I really didn't know a lot about business. I knew about sports, and I went to Santa Barbara and ran track. And I remember when I was there, people were talking about the stock market and talking about business, and I didn't really know. I wanted to be a lawyer. That's what I wanted to do. But I'd always been interested in philanthropy. And so when I went to law school, I kind of realized that attorneys are great and it's a great profession. But if I really wanted to make a difference, I had to figure out how to make lots of money. And so I saw people doing real estate. And so I came up with the idea of going around school, asking them to give me their money from student loans or work or whatever and buy a building, and started in real estate as I was going to take the bar and things like that. And that's how I started.
So what was the first property you bought once you got started?
We bought a 5-unit building, I think when I was 22 or 21 years old in South LA near the law school at Loyola.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So you bought that first building, I think that was 1983?
Yes. No, actually,
And-
1982.
And then Santee Village, which I want to hit on, was your first, it was your first, high profile deal. But I want to talk about from 82 to that deal in 98. What were you doing in between? How'd you grow the platform?
So, I passed the bar and was doing a couple deals a year. And after a couple of years as a lawyer, I realized if I didn't leave, I was never going to be able to really go for it. So I ended up doing a mixed-use development in Old Town Pasadena, which was 3 buildings. It was an old jail, an old residential hotel, and a livery stable. We turned it into a mixed-use project. Really interesting experience. I had to take over the construction because my partner that was supposed to be a developer wasn't really that great at it. He went 100% over budget. I had to get a hard money loan to finish the deal. And it was complicated. It had tax credits, easements, all kinds of stuff. And so it was a great experience. And I realized it was really complicated. And so I learned, how to deal with complication in construction. But I also found it easier just to buy apartment buildings. So I kept on buying apartment buildings throughout Los Angeles, about 1,000 units in Koreatown. I would syndicate, I would refinance, I would do whatever I could do to buy the deals. And I stayed mostly in the multifamily realm.
Yeah, and then Santee Village was you talk about complexity because we've discussed this one. It was very high profile, multi-building property in downtown LA. You bought in '98, which for those not from the LA area, downtown LA was a much different place back then. So I want to talk about how that deal unfolded, how you sourced it, and how you executed.
So, one of the great things about being involved in charities, you find people that share your passion. And on that deal, a number of members, including one on this call, were involved in the transaction. Brad Luster, a friend of mine from Guardians or from the Jewish Federation, called me up and said, "Hey, Mark, I have this building downtown on LA Street. You want to buy it? It's kind of an interesting building." I said, "Sure, it's one building. I'll do something creative." Then he calls me back and says, "No, it's 10 buildings and it's 800,000 feet." And I said, "Yes." And I had no idea how I was going to do it. So my first call was to my friend who's on this call, Steve Bram. I said, "Steve, I got this deal. I heard there's, high leverage financing right now. There's debt funds, can you do this?" He says, "Mark, there's good news and there's bad news." So what's the bad news? "Well, I'm going to Jerusalem tomorrow." "What's the good news?" "I can get you a loan. I have 3 lenders that are interested in your deal. I can get you a 95% loan at 12% interest." And Steve performed. And I used people from philanthropy on the title insurance, on the law. And so I ended up buying these 10 high-rise buildings. They were industrial buildings with sewing contractors in the buildings, and schmata, salespeople were selling cloth on the bottom floors. And that's the beginning of the deal.
And so you bought it with that, you figured out the capital structure. What'd you do in between on the execution side?
I hustled to gather up money. I thought it was too complicated to take investors, and so I did it myself, cobbled together the money, got it together. And then what I did is I decided, I studied the property and I said, I think this could be a great mixed use housing project. I saw what Tom Gilmore was doing, a smaller project around the corner. And I started hiring people to execute this vision of having 550 units, 100,000 feet of retail, 2 creative office buildings, golf, basketball, pools and jacuzzis on the roof, intermodal parking, building a parking structure. So it was a complicated project with a lot of moving pieces. And I started going to different cities and talking to the mayors and the developers of Dallas, Denver, what they did to take seedy downtowns and convert them to vibrant downtowns like I was hoping to have in LA.
That's awesome. And yeah, the downtown area, well, it's definitely been hit by COVID. It's amazing how much it keeps changing and developing. And we have a big position down there as well. So it's good stuff. So I want to quickly pivot to kind of the environment we're in now. So COVID's receding. LA, I think, just today announced they're going to the yellow tier. But look at the investment environment. The 10 years up 50 bips over the last 3 months. The Fed announced they're going to keep rates flat until employment starts picking up again. We're starting to see significant increases in construction materials and other inflation. Overall, there's a ton of capital in the system, both consumer and from the institutional capital side where I sit. A lot of dry powder. And on top of that, the recent tax plan is proposing not only eliminating 1031 exchanges, but a 40% capital gains tax. So in light of, and this is just a more dynamic environment than we've seen in some time, how is this influencing your current investing decisions?
Well, even before all this, I thought the market was getting a little bit overheated, and I was kind of shocked that COVID didn't slow it down at all. The collections and occupancy and things that are going on in LA, the rates have gone down, I think, dramatically during COVID, and yet I haven't seen difference in pricing. We're being, as we always are, trying to be very careful and looking at our downside. We're looking at a lot of markets outside of California that don't have as much regulation. There's more sturdy, durable cash flow, better jobs, less building, or maybe there's a lot of building, or there's more demand. And so we look at a lot of different drivers and have a lot of different markets that we're buying in. And, through our relationships, we're finding some deals, but they're more the needles in the haystack rather than just deals that are on the market.
Yeah, so you're investing in both types of markets. So you've been in LA, high regulation, but also high barrier to entry creates kind of a moat, which has led to substantial rent growth. I think 20-year timeline, LA rents have gone up 3.5% consistently. Obviously taking a dip now, but you look at some of the other markets, like in Texas, there's supply concerns. I mean, Austin, which everyone loves, you look back the last few years, rent growth has been kind of flat to down. So if you were starting out today, where would you advise? Where would you focus on? I guess would you really focus on these the more red business friendly states, or are you more attracted to the event? Assuming the COVID the eviction freezes go away, would you start in LA?
Well, the challenge with LA right now is there's a big differential on the actual what you could actually get in rents going forward, what your occupancy is going to be. And so you're buying on old rent rolls. So it's very dangerous to buy in LA unless you get a really great basis. I think it really depends on what part of their career a person's in. If they're working for someone, doing it on their own. I would be very careful about the downside. I would, sometimes the best deals you do are the ones you don't do. I think right now, unless you really know the markets, really understand the sub-markets, and understand, where rents are in the past and where they're going, I think you got to be careful. You got to be a very cautious buyer right now. I think just because there's so much capital out there, I always tell my people that 90% of crazy is still crazy. These prices are crazy. And even if you get 90% of crazy, you're still overpaying. So you got to be careful. So I think that you never lose money by being careful.
No, agreed. So on the sourcing side, investment sales brokers, I'm sure, are constantly sending you guys new deals. So what's your filter in terms of going through everything, and what do you look for when deciding to dedicate resources on a new deal?
Well, one of the big things is buying off-market deals, ones that really are not being marketed actively by a broker. In fact, virtually every deal we've ever bought has not been from an active package marketing. So it's building relationships over long periods of time and performing, and buying things that are from unsophisticated sellers, or undermanaged, or there's a situation why they're selling, or they need to get out. They need, the partners want out, or there's even times when they just want to make a return and they want to get out of Dodge. So there's all these different circumstances, and they all can produce an opportunity to buy. And they might be making a profit, which is great. I don't care if they're making a profit as long as I can make more of a profit. And so you look at all these different factors, and relationships are everything. People could give deals to a lot of people, but a lot of the stuff I buy is from repeat people that have sold to me, and long-term relationships and performance in various markets.
Yeah, so it's more focused on the background and the sourcing and where who the seller is.
Right. And also, if you truly can close all cash without a loan, if you have a strong balance sheet and financial statement, they look at these things in determining who to award things to, especially when they're not going out to market. They really got to be careful. They might only have one shot to give it to somebody before it's going to be widely marketed. So they want to close it.
No, very, very true. So in terms of the operation, we partner with many different types of sponsors. Some are solely focused on investing, and they'll third party out, the management and operational functions, and asset manage in-house, but third party the property management, and others will property manage in-house. So you're in the former group, and while if you're not PMing, you theoretically have less oversight, but you're not in the HR business, and you can focus on the core competencies. So what was the driving factor that generate that decision?
Well, first of all, we do manage in-house in Los Angeles, and it is an HR nightmare at times. In fact, right now, we're looking for an asset manager for our whole portfolio and a property manager for our Valley portfolio. So just as an example, both on the asset management side and the property management side, it's hard to find superstars. And here's the thing that I came to believe. In LA, for a number of reasons, we're doing it in-house because it just works better for the way that we operate. However, what we don't do is the rest of our portfolio, which is in 10 states. We know that if we're focusing all our time on the 300 employees that we would have, we would not be maximizing acquisitions. And we look for really great asset managers who can generate NOI, who are really hands-on. And they go around the United States and manage our management companies. And we have, different metrics that we measure everybody by. And each week on our calls, we go over those metrics. And an asset manager is basically keeping the property management companies in line to execute while we're out there buying stuff, as opposed to worrying about the resident manager at Ann Arbor, Michigan. We could focus on the results rather than people.
No, makes total sense. So this is a two-part question I got for you. What advice do you have for someone getting started in the real estate business right out of college, and for someone already in the business with 7 to 10 years experience, wants to hang their own shingles and operator someday? What's the most important skill set they should hone?
Getting experience in the full cycle. One of the things that we believe at our company, we want someone to understand property management, operations, an analyst, the whole thing. I think I did everything. I never worked for anybody, and I learned every aspect, including actually doing the maintenance and painting and all the things, the legal, everything. I think that the more experience you can get, the better. A lot of times at an employment place, you get caught in a box. That's not really good for knowing the whole. So the more that you have experience, hands-on experience, to learn everything you can about the business, that's the best thing to do before you go out on your own.
Yeah, no. Personally, we during the recession, we were in the operating company business, and we had a management company that oversaw 1,100 units. And when things hit the fan, I had to step in and oversee that. And I hated it at the time, but looking back, it was an invaluable learning experience. So I echo that completely. So obviously, you're a major success story, but every business has bumps along the way. And if you could look back to the beginning, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned?
Well, I've had a number of failures that things didn't work out the way I wanted. Sometimes it was just making less money, but other times it was, really a big bump. And one of the big bumps I had is while I was doing the 800,000 square foot deal in downtown, I just decided that the city asked me to do this project. It was 23 acres, and the building was 1.8 million square feet, the Sears Tower in Boyle Heights. So I bought 23 acres plus a 1.8 million square foot building to do like a $700 million project while I was already doing another project. And I bought it really well. I thought I bought it really cheap. I bought it at a really good time. Everything was great. And then the world changed. and I was in the middle, ready to put the shovel in the ground. I got everything entitled, everything ready to go. And it was 2007 and I decided to sell. Well, guess what? You never know what's going to happen politically, economically. And so it was a good time to sell. I had buyers, but I kind of got screwed around by a bunch of buyers. The city was very unhelpful. Sears, the tenant, tried to sue me so they could get some of the profit. And I ended up winning the lawsuit after 5 years, but I lost the market. It was 2012, and I had to pay the carrying costs all those years. But the biggest loss, okay, I lost money on it, that's fine, was the opportunity cost. All the deals I didn't do because I was distracted by a development that was so big and it could go wrong for so many reasons outside of my control. I learned a valuable lesson. It's not just the deal being bad, it's the opportunity cost that will cost you your time and the opportunity to go into other deals while you're dealing with a problem. That's the biggest lesson I learned.
Time is our most valuable resource. And I would say when you're looking at deals, you have to look at what goes into it and how much of your focus is going to require. Because the 17 IRR that requires little time, the 19 IRR that requires a ton of time with a lot of risk.
Right.
I'd much rather do the 17 IRR deal. So I'm with you there. So when I talk to younger sponsors looking to start on their own, the one thing that always comes up as the biggest challenge is simply asking for money. Especially those that don't come from that background. So if you have someone who has a solid business plan and a career track record working for someone, but not the net worth of the immediate network to capitalize their first deal, what advice do you have for them to start to basically go around and capitalize a transaction that is attractive?
Well, one thing obviously, they could partner with someone that's more experienced, a co-GP or something like that, and they can help them raise money. Another thing is to start on a deal that's small enough that they can, be successful, don't have to raise a lot of money, and execute their business plan. I think getting a track record, it's kind of a catch-22. You got to do something to get a track record, but you got to raise money to do the deal. But I think that if you start with smaller stuff that you can actually execute, you show someone a track record, it's a lot easier to attract capital.
No, definitely agreed. So with that, so from my seat, at HIG, we're focused on middle market checks, so anywhere from 12 to 50. And our biggest competition really is family office and syndicated capital, where most emerging sponsors come to us because they'll be tapped out at $8 to $10 million. I look at you, and we've known each other for a while, and I've been badgering you for some deals, but you've got incredible syndicated network of investors that you can easily cobble up $15, $20 million checks, so which is unique in the business. So what do you attribute that to?
Well, we have our own family office that I formed, and so I have a lot of friends that have family offices. And for years, I said they wanted to invest, and I was doing my own thing, not really raising outside capital. And so I started, especially when we were doing the student housing and now the multifamily, started taking some of the capital, and we were doing very well. We had a really good track record, and more and more family offices knew that my interests were aligned with theirs. I was indifferent when I sold. I wasn't doing it just for the promote. I was doing it to build net worth and safety. And so because I also put a lot of money in the deal, so people felt very comfortable investing with me because I was agnostic to when we sold, what we did. I just wanted everybody to have safe returns, good cash flow. And they saw that my alignment with them was very reassuring. I wasn't just trying to make a buck, do something really quickly, make a bunch of fees. I was trying to be safe, but yet also grow their net worth.
Yeah, no, I echo that. When we structure deals, alignment of interest with our partners is the most important thing. It's what everything ties to. So no, I'm with you. So you recently started a co-GP platform that I want to hit on what you're doing there. But for those who haven't come across that capital structure, can you just give a brief background and what are the benefits to it?
Well, for many, many years, a lot of people that I mentored and different people I knew wanted me to invest with them and do different things. And I kind of did it informally. But the idea was that, we only see so many great deals and we're very picky. If we could find best-in-class operators that develop a niche, let's say in South LA or Roseville, California, wherever the place was that we wanted to be in, and they were really good, but the difference, they were at a critical mass. point is that for them to succeed, the inflection point, I mean, is that they needed more capital. They needed a balance sheet. They needed an experienced person that they could partner with that could put up the GP portion. And sometimes we'll put up the LP portion. But then we could go to someone like you, because I'll put the GP money on, and then you're our LP, and you're going to give better terms. If I'm involved in the deal and I'm working the deal, my staff's involved, you're going to give us better terms because of my track record, my balance sheet, and my experience than they'd get a loan. And so we're able to attract better financing, better debt, better equity, whether we do it or it's from someone like you. It's just better for them, and they can do more deals because we're always able to give them 90% of the GP capital, and so they can grow exponentially.
Are you signing on the loan guarantees for those deals?
Not on really on carve outs. Sometimes we'll do it, not on personal guarantees. We'll do some of the carve outs, especially when we know the people, and we're very picky about who we're going to do it with. And it's not by doing a deal; it's a relationship. We want to have relationships and develop a platform. And we're not in the business of just doing one-off deals.
Yeah, no, it's the easiest way to scale. I mean, we've done repeat business with half our partners, and whenever someone sends us a deal, it just goes to the top. Repeat existing partner sends us a deal, it goes to the top of the list. It's just so much more scalable to not have to recreate the wheel. And even in the trenches, somebody know they operate. So I'm with you. And for that program, is it just multifamily and student? Would you look at other asset classes?
We're mostly focusing on multifamily, even though we're large in student housing. We're not and we just did a bunch of student deals. Our focus is mostly multifamily and some student, but it's definitely just those two right now. We want to stay in our wheelhouse because we're good at it. We know how to execute it. We bring more value to that than to other types.
Got it. And you'll help out with reporting as well, I take it, right?
Yes, but we're hoping that they have sufficient reporting since they're going to be the operator. On the property management side, they usually do most of the reporting. We help with it, but they should be primary.
Got it. That's two more questions, and I'll turn over to Karen. So what's your typical day like?
Typical days, I get up and do Tai Chi and work out, get up early, very early in the morning, so I can get a lot of things done before the kids get up. And then, in between the workout and the Tai Chi, I'm running around the house, chasing my 7-year-olds, getting them ready for school. And sometimes being playful if I can spend a few minutes doing that. Then I get to the office and I do all my emails, do a lot of emails early in the morning. In between all this, I do a bunch of emails and see what's going on and check my calendar. I go in after the workout and I start making calls depending on what part of the country I'm making calls. I have meetings with top lieutenants at the company. We have a 5-minute, what's your top priorities? We do several times a week, and we have calls on some of the properties with the property management companies. And I like to be on some of the calls to see what's going on. I have a lot of ideas with marketing and stuff like that. I'm talking to investors, people that are calling about saying they want to do deals with us. And then I spend about a third of my time on philanthropy, different things that I do. We're raising money to rebuild the Camp Hess Kramer that I went to as a kid. I'm in charge of the architect committee for that. And I'm on all these different boards. And so I have a lot of different duties and things that I do with philanthropy. And then, I'm also talking to brokers, sourcing some of my connections and turning them over to my people. And I'm also really involved in YPO. I'm the international chair of multifamily in YPO. So I have a big position, dealing with the Young Presidents Organization. And then I'm in a lot of other groups within Young Presidents Organization. And YPO is a big part of my life. And it's been an amazing tool for personal development, business, and life. So it's been a really great thing for me. I've gotten a lot out of it and with my charities.
So I know philanthropy is a big component for you. And it's a pretty impressive resume. You're the former chair of the Jewish Federation Real Estate Division. You're the current chair of APAC Real Estate Division, and recently came on to our JNF Real Estate Advisory Council. And you hit on this at the beginning. Philanthropy does play a big role in your life, but why is it so important to you?
Well, as a kid, I was very fortunate to get a scholarship to go to camp, and various things were given to me to give me opportunities. And camp was a transformative experience for me at Camp Hess Kramer about community and learning to give back. And I had a cousin, Zell Camille, in San Diego, who was the honorary mayor of Del Mar. He used to write 39 checks to different charities. And he was a Holocaust survivor, and he's someone who rescued people from Poland out of the Holocaust. And I kind of, from that and from my family was, even though they didn't have lots of money, they gave a lot of time and donated what they could. And so I was always surrounded with people that cared. And it was just a burning desire that I had. I just wanted, my big thing is I always wanted to make a difference. And I wanted to use my business skills to expedite the ability to do that. And I try to apply all my real estate principles to what I do in philanthropy, to leverage, to get, matching gifts or whatever it is we're doing. I always try to use it. And I help start various venture philanthropy funds that focus on, doing creative things, getting people in the real estate community involved in philanthropy.
No, it's great. So, it's a great segue into turning over to my JNF chair colleague, Karen Kennedy. You started a new initiative to help tackle the homeless crisis here in LA, and looking forward to hitting on that. And before we do, I just want to say, if anyone has any questions for Mark, we're going to do a Q&A at the end. So just throw some questions into the chat, and I'll moderate them at the conclusion of that discussion. So I'll turn over to Karen now.
My turn. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
So I pulled some stats, and I'm always overwhelmed by this with respect to the homeless issue. We see it. I live in Venice, so we are a small part, but we have a huge homeless population. You can't miss them. Yet when I take my grandkids to school in Culver City, there's no one, no homeless visible. So here's the stats that I was able to pull today. Last year, they didn't run any homeless stats that they're willing to admit to, I suppose, because of COVID. But there's 568,000 homeless in the U.S., with 151,000, that's 26.5% in California. And of that, 44% of the California homeless are in LA County. So I know it's a passion project for you. I'm curious to know how you see your role working with the city as you've come to know them. Is it workable with the city? Is it more divisive? And now with the overlay of what this Judge Carter's decision has laid upon us, there's a lot of things to consider. Where would you like to start?
Well, it's a complicated issue. And about 18, 20 years ago, when I was doing my projects downtown, when I was looking for land, Jan Perry, the councilwoman, told me, go look up who owns a different piece of real estate around where you want the parking in downtown. And it came to find that the city owned a lot of the land. And I said something. I was friends with the city controller, Laura Chick, and I said, Laura, the city sure seems to own a lot of stuff. I actually made a deal with the MTA. I got a 60-year ground lease, and I built a parking structure above a bus depot. And so when I was doing that, I told them, I said, I think you guys own a lot of real estate, but no one in the city can direct me. And so I suggested that they inventory everything they own. And Laura said, why don't you write a report with a couple other people about what we should do with our real estate? Because we found there was 5,000 parcels that were owned by the city or owned or controlled by the city. And, they weren't being utilized right. And ironically, Eric Arcetti was one of the council people that I told. I said, why don't we upzone, allow more zoning, more units on some of these parcels, and we can give it to affordable housing developers, and the city wouldn't have to use money. And I even suggested modular housing then. And they didn't really like the idea, because I think the union was against the idea because they wouldn't get all the work. And so, I wrote this report, did all these things, and nothing much came of it. And I kind of, not that I quit, but I kind of gave up a little bit then. I sat on every mayor's council over every year to deal with homeless and housing. And I didn't really feel like we were ever really heard. They had us do all this stuff. They never did anything. And so I was a little burned out on the whole thing. I'd helped with some affordable housing things, but this time it was a call by the Young Presidents Group. They were doing a homeless conference in LA before the pandemic. We had the governor and all these different people were going to come and speak. I thought it was really great. Well, the conference got called off because of the pandemic. However, we formed different groups, and I got involved in a group that was doing transitional housing, and we formed a nonprofit called Dignity Moves. And the idea was to do this modular housing and a transition for a year or two. All we needed was the land to borrow for a year or two or to lease, and we could move it. And so we proposed it to the city, and we proposed it different places. Well, it got log jammed in the city. So we're completing a project in Mountain View, California right now. Santa Barbara has just approved a bunch of projects. And I had all kinds of phone calls or attempted phone calls with different city people. And I offered personally to pay for the modular housing, and they couldn't do anything. They couldn't even call me back, or rarely called me back. And, we're making some progress now, but I told them I'm not going to fundraise for our nonprofit unless we're going to be doing things in LA. So you guys on this committee, you have to figure out how we're going to do things with LA. And I got very prominent people from major businesses that are on my committee. And I'm hoping through all the relationships that we'll actually get through. We're being promised things, but nothing's happened in LA. So it's very frustrating. Not all the people have mental illness. Not all the people are incurable, or whatever people would say to use the excuse for why we don't deal with homeless. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot we have to do. And I believe, no matter what they tell you about all this money, it's the private sector that has to step up and get the job done. And we as a community can't keep waiting for the city of LA or even the county to do the job for us.
I would agree. I would tell you that in my neighborhood, there was one of those lots. It was a former maintenance yard. And in order to get the city to actually hear the developer, who the city behind closed doors brought to the table, to even get them to hear, I had to form a homeowners group and sue the city. And then suddenly they heard. Then we backed off the lawsuit because it's just a few homeowners trying to fund something we didn't have the ability to really see all the way through. But it took private funds, but it's still not done. And now there's Judge Carter. So what do you see is going to happen with that decision, Mark?
Well, even though in some ways I was kind of thought it was a good decision, but it was a bad decision when he held $1 billion, because what's happening is there's a bunch of projects that are going on that are in jeopardy because of it. I don't know a lot about the particulars. I just knew it was a bad thing. It's not going to get the job done. But I told them a bunch of ways that we get around it. We could borrow money. We can bond against it. I already solved the problem as far as I'm concerned. We can still have access to the money because there's other ways the city can borrow money temporarily. And so any problem you throw at me, I can give them a solution if they'll listen. One other funny thing I'll tell you is that, you might not know this, but they're building 1,500 units at the VA on the property of the VA, which is really great. So I asked Congressman Lewis, since you're going to be building this, it's going on for a while, why can't I utilize the grounds while we're doing this, put some on modular housing? And he says, Mark, it will take so long to get congressional approval. By the time we get it approved, the other housing will be built. So the backlog, continues. And Congressman Lewis is a good guy, and he's good for Israel, and he's good in the community. But he can only do what he can do because we have a congressional thing. It's the federal government that's a big logjam, as the city is.
Yes, the city. Do you find that one of the hurdles, or what thoughts do you have relative to transitional housing? And then what if they won't leave? Like the MTA lot. Well, then what? How does that work?
That's a very good question. And that is why some of my developer friends who first said, Mark, I'll give you land for a year or two, they go back to their office and their staff says, are you crazy? First of all, if these people don't move, then we can't do our development. Second, the LA Times will have an article that we're kicking people out. So no good deed goes unpunished. And so apparently the city's telling me they can write some type of special contract where you'll be able to get rid of the people easier. I don't know. And based on my experience of what I'm going through on the pandemic right now, they have all the landlords' hands so tied. And, I believe that the tenants that are, unfortunate should get help. There's a lot of people taking advantage, and the city's not helping with it.
Right. That's the same city that won't return calls and can't get, won't listen to neighborhood councils and all the other that we all have to accept and not accept at the same time, right?
It's tough to navigate. You know, the city is tough to navigate. I think that a lot of the council people's hearts are in the right place, but they just don't know how to get things done.
Yeah. They say that 45%, well, let me look at it this way. 55% of the homeless, somewhere between 55 and 60%, are underemployed or unemployed. And they're not mentally challenged, and they're not addicted. They're not, it's just unfortunate circumstances. And there's so many other aspects to homelessness that have to be dealt with in addition to putting a roof over someone's head. What do you think of this tiny house that project that was done in was it North Hollywood?
Yeah, it's great. I think all the things are great. One thing I didn't mention with our program, we'll bring all the social services to the project, including both the bathroom, showers, the house, the whole thing. And that's an essential part of being able to deal with this, is you have to bring the social services that are needed for the community that you create. And so that's always, we can, for $50,000 all in social services, all the hookups, everything, and the house, we can do a unit. And so it's a lot less
50,000?
50,000 a unit for the stuff that I'm talking about.
Because the city, Mark, the city is saying it's like 700,000 a door.
But ours is modular, temporary. It's not for permanent. For permanent, there's a woman that I know from this, that used to work for the city, who's doing it for 200,000 permanent housing, and she's getting money from nonprofits, and she's basically doing everything all cash, then refinancing after it's done and reusing the money. And she's showing a great model, and all the council people are saying, "Oh, do it in our district, do it in our district," but they're not really helping her. At least a lot of them aren't helping her actually get it done. But she's making partnerships with churches that have extra land, which was one of my ideas, and she's been very successful at it.
What I've seen is this concept of, NIMBYs, right? And that, but if people are pushed off of Skid Row and there's no place to put them with the Jones settlement, decision, where are they going to go? I mean,
they're using these hotels, which I think is only a temporary thing, because as hotels come back, they're not going to be able to afford to take in all the people. But that was Hotel Room Key or something, was one of their initiatives, and it was fairly successful. But I kind of point out, I said, you guys, I'd rather you see put the money into permanent transition or permanent housing rather than commandeering hotels.
Yeah, because it's not bringing resolution to a very critical problem.
It's temporary, and they don't control the hotel. Whereas the modular stuff, you own it and you can move it from site to site.
Wow. Wish you luck, Mark.
I know.
I'll volunteer to help you. Adam, we should take some Q&A.
Yep. So I got a few questions that came in. So we'll move from homelessness to student housing. This question comes from Mark Schwartz. So Mark, how confident that student housing will return to its pre-COVID days, especially in California, Utah, Michigan, and Texas, and other student housing markets that you like?
Well, we were very fortunate during the pandemic. At first we buckled down. We thought, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. And it was really intensive on the management side, but we were able to collect 97% of, and 98% occupancy during the pandemic. We did way better in student housing in the 10 markets we're in than we did in the Los Angeles apartment market. And the reason why was we picked schools that were major universities, Pac-12, Big Ten, and great sports schools. We were walking distance to campus. We were well priced. We managed them well. We had good property management. We did good asset management. We stayed in front of things. And what happened is initially people took off, and we go, oh my God, they're all going home. And they went home and they couldn't live in their parents' houses. They went back and they
Or the parents said goodbye. Go back. I hear the school calling
the parents
you.
said goodbye. So we picked the right schools. We picked the right places. The thesis of it being resilient during bad times, recession resilient, proved true. However, there are a lot of private schools and other schools that didn't do as well. California really did it strictly and didn't do it the way I think they should have done it compared to Tulane, where my niece went, where they were open the whole time. They built structures outside. They did everything right. They really executed. California executed very poorly, bad communication, and we still were lucky at Santa Barbara. We were full, but it was really a challenge. And California has been really a challenge in every way, whereas other states have been great.
Yeah, I think it's a part of your success is that you just got to, from your sourcing, you have a very narrow box for student. There's a lot of criteria that has to be met, and
Right.
You stay disciplined. And this is one of the biggest stress cases we could ever imagine in our business. So it's hold true. This question comes from Steve Bram. So he wants to get your view on increasing density in residential areas. So near transit to lower the cost of housing, for example, allowing 4-unit buildings on residential lots. I think there was a measure that was struck down, maybe in Baldwin Hills, where they would have allowed multifamily or 2-unit duplexes on single family lots. What's your view on this increase of density?
Well, first thing I tell you, there's already a tool in your toolbox, ADUs, additional units. I'm putting ADUs, additional units, on a lot of my projects. It's something that's allowed. You can get around. The city doesn't have to be involved. It's organized by the state. So that's the first thing you should do is granny flats, ADUs, whatever you want to call them, put on extra structures in neighborhoods. Second thing is that Wiener, I think state senator, no, he's a legislator up in Sacramento, was always proposing these different ordinances, and they've been struck down. But I believe that Sacramento and other cities are allowing these ordinances. I think we have to do it in California. We have to do it in Los Angeles. We have to bite the bullet. I think it does need to be in certain neighborhoods. It should be near transit corridors. It should be near certain things. But I think we need to use all the tools in the toolbox to address the problems that we have. And a lot of us aren't going to be as happy, but some of the neighborhoods that already have duplexes and things like that probably should have more.
Yeah, I mean, everyone says New York is expensive, but even before COVID, rents were down, 10, 15% just because of supply. And you add supply, prices come down. And I think it's pretty important here. So, I got time for 2 more questions. This comes from Larry Steinberg. What are your thoughts on opportunity zones?
Well, opportunity zones, have some really good benefits. The 1031 exchange, as long as it exists, is a better mechanism for a real estate person. But what was great about opportunity zones, if someone sells a business, a stock, or something, or some other type of asset other than real estate, it was a great way to defer and actually eliminate some of the taxes. The challenge with opportunity zones is people are overpaying for the properties, and the properties need to make sense separate from whether it's an opportunity zone. I always look at everything, forget the gimmicks and the taxes. Does the real estate deal make sense on its own? And the opportunity zone thing makes it even better. And so you got to be really careful. And also some of the promoters were asking for a lot of different fees and higher structures. And I haven't been as comfortable with some of the deals that I've seen in opportunity zones. However, if done right, it can be a really great thing. There's a lot of benefits. It's really good for tax situation. And it may be going forward even better depending on Biden's tax changes.
I have one more question from Danny Kenemed, who's one of our sponsors. So it seems like in today's environment, being developer is a negative thing, but a lot of people will build because we love what we do and we need to add housing. So the question is, how do we change the narrative around developers, and what can we do to help with the homeless crisis?
I know they're big questions, but I think the biggest challenge with developers right now is the lumber cost. I mean, a lot of my friends that are building, they buy a project, they're paying a lot for land because it's been, inflated. And all of a sudden they had a project they were going to be able to do the lumber for $1 million, and it's $1.5 million. And other commodities are higher. So I think the biggest challenge is, your pricing. And the other thing is that, developers do need to work with the community. I think that one of the things that I did on the Sears deal, I had like 300 meetings with every type of community group. It took 1.5 years to get through all these meetings. But we had charrettes, we'd have the community members come, and we had working groups where there's like 200 people, and we'd have boards up and people would write things down, and we went around and shared. I did everything you could imagine to include the community, so that when I was going to build that project, I knew exactly what they wanted. And I didn't do everything they wanted, but I listened to them. So that's the first thing, is community involvement, don't, even if you have zoning by right, you need to get people to buy into what you're doing. It's a community thing. So that's what I always did as a developer. And then with the homeless, I think that what we could do is, give money to different nonprofits that specialize in building, the housing, something like my nonprofit or other people's nonprofits that are actually producing something. I'd give money. And also we got to organize the real estate community to get involved and to raise money and to actually just do it. We got to figure out a way to do it. I think churches are a really great way to partner with a church to build affordable housing. I was asked to do it many times when I was doing development. I couldn't do it because I was so busy with those other projects. But I think, anyone that has extra land, we should make partnerships with.
No, I agree. So I want to thank you, Mark, for taking the time to speak with us. It's been great. This conversation is going to be recorded so we can all, share and post, and definitely a lot of wisdom that's been gained from this talk. So it's much appreciated.
And I hope that people will join us in the JNF cause. One of the interesting things I didn't mention is look at this group and what we do in Israel, and how Israel takes land that's not even developable and they turn it into something. They build housing and they get things done. We need to take a page out of the book of what JNF is doing and apply it to Los Angeles. We have land that's already developed and we can't get it done. In Israel, they take nothing and make gold out of it.
Could not agree more. Kol kavod. All right, so I'm going to turn over to Steve Bram. He's one of our founding chairs to close us out.
So, hello, everybody. And Mark, great to hear your story. It's always so interesting. Mark, you and I have known each other for 38 years when we met at Federation, way back when. We've gone to Israel a bunch of times, and we've had a great time doing all the good things you've tried to do for the world. So, Mark, wonderful to hear your story and your views on life today. Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Bram. A lot of you on the Zoom, I know. I'm president of George Smith Partners. As you know, George Smith Partners is a mortgage brokerage and investment banking firm in LA. We do about $3 billion a year of loans that we arrange on commercial real estate deals. I'm a proud member of the real estate division of JNF, a cabinet member and co-founder of the LA Real Estate Group, along with David Rosenthal, who you heard from before. Just very, very excited about what's going on with JNF here. Muriel, by the way, great job on running as our staff person here. I want to thank everybody on the line for participating in today's program. We want to ask you to join our real estate network and be part of our JNF family. Join us as we work to be a part of this $1 billion investment they're making for the land and the people of Israel. Join us as we march towards the 120-year legacy of building a nation through JNF. So we want you to join the JNF Los Angeles Real Estate Group. Membership costs $1,800 a year, and that gift can be paid monthly, weekly, annually, whatever you want. Your gift, of course, is tax deductible. It includes complimentary sponsorship. You get something for free. Complimentary sponsorship for the future to be completed real estate referral directory and future real estate programs that are that are planned that will include mailings to 300,000 real estate people in the country that are tied to JNF. So we encourage you to join. We encourage you to make an $1,800 gift to be a part of this. We want to thank you for your support and your passion, for your partnership with Israel, the land of Israel, our people Israel, for now and for generations to come. Yisrael. Hi. It's 1 p.m. and I think the program is adjourned. Is that right, team?
It is. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be in touch.